What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on the channel, and I know it has been a minute since I last uploaded a video, but it's a great time in the sports calendar right now. March Madness is coming to a close. We have the Final Four coming up in both tournaments this weekend. NBA playoffs, the play-in tournament, that's starting soon. MLB season just started. NFL draft later this month. So much going on, but I want to start off talking about a little bit of college basketball / NBA news because Bronny James, son of LeBron James, has decided to declare for the 2024 NBA draft after one season at USC. Now, as we all know, it was a long season for Bronny. Last summer, he had the cardiac arrest incident. It really delayed how much actual basketball he was able to play over the summer. Had to focus more on recovery, and then comes in for the Trojans this year. Delayed start to the season, didn't start the season with USC. Came in off the bench and averaged just 4.8 points per game. Showed flashes that he could be a good or really good NBA player one day. He can hit threes, he can play defense, and he's very athletic. And in today's NBA, teams are looking for guys like that all over the place. So I do think he could come into the NBA and have a really solid career if he continues to develop his skills. Still a little raw right now, so I think him staying in college for maybe at least another year could really benefit him. The rumor came out earlier this week that he was entering the transfer portal, which really wasn't too surprising to me because I figured after everything that's gone on for Bronny in really the last year, he maybe just wants a fresh start at this point. So entering the transfer portal really wasn't that surprising to me. But if a team does decide to draft Bronny, it does beg the question, can they lure LeBron James to come play with them for at least a year or two? Because we know playing with Bronny is something that's really important to LeBron. He's stated it over and over and over again, and he's built up his body. He's kept his body fresh to the point where it's now a reality. He's in his 21st season now in the NBA, and he just dropped 40 points on the Nets a few days ago, so he looks absolutely unstoppable. He could definitely still play in the NBA for a year or two if he really wanted, and playing with Bronny is something that's now a reality, so I think that could be something that really entices a team to take a real look at him, draft him, give him a shot to try and get Bronny or LeBron to come over there. And even if it's not just to lure LeBron over there, maybe they just really think that Bronny has the tools to become a really good player. He's been compared to guys like Drew Holiday in the past, a 3-and-D guy who can get stops. And if you're compared to Drew Holiday, that's definitely not an insult because Drew Holiday's had a long NBA career. He's had a really good NBA career. He's made multiple All-Star teams. He's a really good player. So if Bronny turns out to be Drew Holiday, that's a success in my mind. And so I just wanted to start off the video talking about that because it's really big news, and it may be surprising to some people because Bronny really didn't have the opportunity to do much in his freshman year. So by declaring for the draft, he's betting on himself, he's taking a chance on himself, and maybe an NBA team will take a chance on him to try and lure LeBron to come play with them for however long. And so I wanted to start off the video talking about that. And the next thing I want to talk about, sticking with the NBA, because the playoffs are coming up and teams are really trying to lock in their seeding, get out of the play-in tournament, I wanted to talk about teams who I think will be the most difficult first-round matchups, teams you do not want to play in the first round. And the first team I want to start out with, they've been really hot recently. They just lost to the Warriors a few days ago, but regardless of that, they've been one of the best teams as of late, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. And I really think that the Mavs are but they could be a really scary first round matchup for a lot of teams, especially like the Clippers, who are trying to maintain that top 4 spot. Because when you look at what Luka Doncic is doing this year, leading the league in scoring, averaging like 33 points per game or something like that, and then when you look at how he's been able to mesh with Kyrie Irving, both of them putting in buckets, a lethal scoring backcourt, it's really hard to prepare for Luka and Kyrie in a 7-game series, and just those two alone can make a series go 6 or 7 games when you would think as the lower seed it should be over in 4 or 5. And then when you look at what the Mavericks have done this year at the trade deadline, they got Daniel Gafford. He brings rebounding and size, something they didn't really have before. Kristaps Porzingis they had, but he's injury prone, and Porzingis doesn't really get physical on the block down low like that. Daniel Gafford is a really good center for the Mavs. They can run pick and rolls with him. They traded for PJ Washington at the trade deadline. His numbers were a little down this year, I believe, when he was with the Hornets, but he's finding his role on the Mavs. And then Derek Lively was easily the steal of the draft for me. I don't know how he fell all the way to Dallas, but he is just making play after play after play this year for Dallas. And I think he's averaging like a double-double or something like that for the Mavs. So he's been really good for them. And I just look at in totality, you don't want to play the Mavs in the first round. Luka and Kyrie, that's too much to deal with, and all their auxiliary pieces are finding their rhythm on the team. So I think the Mavs are a team that you would want to avoid in round one. Next team, the Miami Heat. We see it every year. They kind of just play around in the regular season, hang in there just long enough to be in play-in tournament territory. And I think the Heat are going to be a scary first-round matchup this year, mainly because Bam Adebayo looks really good this year. Jimmy Butler always decides to turn it on around this time of year. And then you have a guy like Tyler Hero, who's been out of the lineup since late February. He's going to be coming back. They traded for Terry Rozier at the trade deadline. You know how good of a bucket getter he can be. And really the scariest thing about the Heat is Eric Spoelstra, because I do think he basically outcoaches every coach he plays in the playoffs. And he did it last year, aside from the finals when he lost to Michael Malone and the Nuggets. But there's no shame in that, because Nikola Jokic is arguably the best player in the NBA. And you knew that the Heat were a little bit outmatched in last year's finals, and they still were able to get a game off of Denver. So yeah, the Heat are going to be a scary first-round matchup for all the reasons I mentioned. Their personnel doesn't really strike fear into you, but the way they play defense and the way they can outsmart teams should be something that strikes fear in whoever they're going to play in the first round. And it's looking like that could potentially be the Bucks. And when you look at the Bucks right now, they appear to be in shambles. Doc Rivers doesn't really know what he's doing with this team. There are 500 teams since they got him. And so the Heat are going to be a very scary first-round matchup. And then I want to stay in the East with this topic, because I think another team that could turn some heads in the first round is the 76ers. Joel Embiid just came back from his injury. He dropped 24 points on the Thunder on Tuesday, and then the Sixers go on the road to beat Miami on Thursday. And how they were able to stay afloat with Embiid injured is something that I think should really be commended. Nick Nurse, I think, has a lot to do with that. I actually think he's the only coach in the East that can rival Spoelstra. I think if anyone can outcoach Eric Spoelstra in a series, it's Nick Nurse, because he has similar tendencies as him. He knows how to get his team to defend. And I think with Joel Embiid healthy, the Sixers aren't a team you would necessarily want to see in the first round, because you know that they haven't been to a conference finals, but you know they can get to the second round. And if they're going to round into form with everybody healthy, Tyrese Maxey is having an incredible season this year for Philadelphia, and you get Joel Embiid back there with him, I think the Sixers could definitely do some damage in the first round. And Buddy Hield, their trade acquisition at the trade deadline, we know Buddy Hield has been one of the best shooters in the NBA since he's been in the league. He has the most made three-pointers, I think, in like a 5-year span. And so he can really put the ball in the basket from the three-point line, and he could really do some damage in the playoffs as well. And then obviously the wild card for the Sixers is always going to be Tobias Harris, because you never know what you're going to get from him on a game-to-game basis. But he's a really good player. He's capable of giving you 20-plus when he is locked in and engaged and making shots. So yeah, the Sixers are going to be a very scary first-round matchup. So that's two teams from the East. I want to give you one more from the West, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers, because the Lakers, just like last year, picked up their momentum after the All-Star break. They started the season really slow, just like they did last year, but when the roster got more time to gel, pick up their chemistry, they got on a roll. They just finished a recent road trip where they went 5-1, and that biggest win of that road trip was beating the Milwaukee Bucks on the road, overcoming a 19-point deficit, and beating them without LeBron. They beat the Bucks without LeBron twice this year, which I think is pretty crazy. And so they go 5-1 on this road trip. It's looking like they're gonna be able to maybe get the 7th spot or the 8th spot, maybe even get out of the play-in tournament, who knows. But if you see the Lakers in the first round and you're a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder or the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think you should be very, very worried, because the Lakers just overwhelm people with their size and their experience. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, that's not a duo you want to see in the first round. And then you have guys like D'Angelo Russell, who's finally finding his rhythm as the starting point guard for the Lakers. Austin Reeves has had a little bit of a down year, but I think that he is still a really, really productive player that can just get buckets when you aren't really accounting for him in a first round matchup. And I'm not saying that they would definitely beat any of the top teams, but I think when you look at a matchup with the Thunder, that's not a good matchup for OKC, because Oklahoma City's young, inexperienced, and they're not big enough to deal with Anthony Davis or LeBron James. And you have Rui Hachimura too, who's also a really big forward, knows what he's doing on the court, really, really good player, and he looks like he's going to be a part of the Lakers' long-term future. So, yeah, those are 4 teams that I would say are the scariest first-round matchups. The Lakers, the Mavs, the Heat, and the Sixers. Teams you don't really want to see. And as I close out this video, one final thing that I do want to touch on is the Stefon Diggs trade from the Bills to the Texans. Stefon Diggs, one of the most productive wide receivers in the league since he stepped foot in the NFL. He's 5 yards away, I just looked it up, from hitting 10,000 career receiving yards. So he's going to hit that next season. He's really putting together a Hall of Fame career statistically. We'll see how long he plays, but he's had a really, really good career. And you could just kind of tell that he wanted out of Buffalo because he was putting out signs on Twitter every single year. It seems like when we hit the playoffs and Josh Allen has a game where he can't really get on the ball, he's throwing tantrums on the sideline. Him and Josh Allen are getting into arguments. I mean, look, it was a good run in Buffalo, but he gets traded to Houston, and the Texans do something that I think is actually really smart. They were able to void the final years of his contract, and basically, it's going to be a 1-year rental. It's going to be an experiment. If this works, we'll give you an extension, and if it doesn't, we'll just let him walk. They voided the final years of his contract, so he's just going to be playing for 1 year on the Texans, and then we'll see how it works. And when you really look at what the Texans are doing, they had a really, really good offseason. Obviously, they're going to have Will Anderson going into next year, one Defensive Rookie of the Year. CJ Stroud, amazing rookie season. They signed Joe Mixon from the Bengals, Nico Collins, Stefon Diggs, wide receivers like that. The Texans are going to be scary next year. Maybe a top 3 team in the AFC. When you look at the Chiefs, you have to respect them as the reigning champs. Baltimore, runner-ups. They signed Derrick Henry in the offseason, so that'll allow them to lean into their identity a little bit more, which is running the football. I just think it's going to be a great NFL season next year. And like I said, the NFL draft is coming up soon, so let me know what you guys think about that. But that is it. That's all I have for this video today. Let me know what you guys think about Bronny declaring for the NBA draft. Let me know what you guys think about the scariest first-round matchups in the NBA in terms of teams you really don't want to face in the first round. And let me know what you guys think about the Stefon Diggs trade. Is it going to work out for Houston? Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And find the rest of my content linked in the description.